Hey everyone, I'm Coach Chippys and I've been a professional top laner or head coach for the past 8 years. During this time I've reached Worlds and MSI multiple times. Now I'm a full-time coach with a ton of passion towards helping players unlock their potential and climb to their dream rank. What's going on guys? In today's video I'm going to be teaching you everything you need to know about how to play the Trox, and I'm quite excited to get this video out because I've been playing the champ a lot this week and I've been having a ton of fun with the new build and the new playstyle and really just enjoying myself overall. And I guarantee you that if you were to try to add this champion to your pool or even just mess around with him a few games, you'll have a lot of fun as well. So let's not waste any more time and we'll get started. To start us off, as usual, we're going to be going through the rune pages, and luckily for Aatrox, there's only one rune page, and that is the Conqueror page. However, there are some optimizations we can take in the secondary runes, and we'll go through them real quick right now. For your first rune, you're just going to be taking Triumph, and something cool about this rune on Aatrox is the healing you gain from it is actually amplified by his ulti. So if you're able to secure a reset, which is a big part of playing Aatrox, Triumph actually makes your reset even more powerful, so this is a rune you must take on him. For your second rune, you have the choice between Alacrity and Tenacity. Now, of course, you'd only take Tenacity versus high crowd control comps. However, versus those comps, you'll be building Merc Treads anyway, and especially the recent patch with the Tenacity nerf, stacking Merc Treads with Tenacity is even weaker than it was. So for the most part, I would recommend Alacrity unless they have a crazy amount of CC. And for the final rune in this tree, you're just going to be taking Last Stand no matter what. You don't have much of a choice, as Last Stand is just so much more powerful than the other two, especially on Aatrox, where if you're lower HP, it makes you do more damage, you're going to be healing more as well. So just in general, this rune is the most powerful, and you'll be taking it every game. And for your secondary runes, it's always going to be Resolve. However, in the Resolve tree, you have the choice between Bone Plating and Second Wind, depending on matchup. So if you're in a melee matchup that can't really proc your Bone Plating, such as Jax, Riven, Kled, then you'll definitely take Bone Plating. And if you're in a matchup that they have some range abilities that can proc it, or just poke champs in general, you'll be taking the Second Wind. And for your final rune in the tree, you may see a lot of Aatroxes take Overgrowth or the healing one, but I think that is cowardly. You're going to want to take Demolish every game, and my reason for that is, if you don't have Demolish, you have the wrong mentality as a solo queue player. Because you're basically admitting, I'm never going to win my lane enough to hit their tower and proc this rune, so I'll take a scaling one instead. Where if you are truly passionate about improving at the game and getting better and carrying these games, you're going to want to take Demolish and really, it's going to force you to play better in your lane to actually able to use this rune in the first place. So that's part of the reason why I take it, but in general I do think it's just stronger, so definitely run this every game on the Trox. Next topic is going to be summoner spells, and this one won't take up too much time, as for your first spell, you're going to be taking Flash no matter what, and your second spell is either between Teleport and Ignite. However, in upwards of 90% of your games you will run the Teleport. And my reasoning for this is, I've touched on it in another video, but if you take Ignite in matchups where you can't get pushed 1 to 3, there's a very good chance if your opponent is good, he can pin you under your tower, get you stuck, poke you down, and you're never able to find a base without getting bailed out by your jungler, which I hate relying on in solo queue. And as Aatrox, your level 1 to 3 is actually pretty weak, and you don't get pushed in that many matchups. However, the matchups you do get pushed in, versus these tanky champs, you don't really need Ignite, right? They're really weak early, the champs you get pushed against, and they don't have a lot of all-in or healing. Ornn, Gragas, champs like that. The Ignite's not actually that useful. However, there are some situations where it is good, and those situations are versus champs like Vladimir or Akali, where you can get pushed early game, and they are going to look to all in you, and they get some form of healing, mainly Vladimir. But there are more examples, but off the top of my head, those two. But just think about before you take Ignite, do I get pushed early? Is this champion going to all in me? Is the summoner spell useful? And if not, which will be over 90% of the time, just run Teleport. Up next we have item builds, and for your starting item you need to be deciding between Doran's Blade and Doran's Shield. Now Doran's Blade has two advantages over Shield, the first one being it's better in all-ins of course because this one gives AD, Omnivamp and HP, and the Shield only gives HP in terms of a pure all-in. And also Doran's Blade scales a lot better because Doran's Blade is just pure stats, whereas Doran's Shield is mainly, the main benefit of the shield is the health regen, which is only really useful in lane phase. The regen's not going to make a difference in any real team fight or skirmish. So for the most part, you'll be, if you can greed the Doran's Blade, it is better to get, and it's best in matchups versus say Akali or Camille, where they don't have much poke and their melee range. and they're quite weak early game as well, so you can really greed, and it'll help you in the all-ins versus mid lane, but it'll also scale a lot better, and once you start hitting stronger points of your lane, level 5, 7, it is nicer to have the Doran's Blade over the shield. However, Doran's Shield is just stronger for laning as the regen is really unmatched, and you should be buying this in a really hard matchups or really any matchup that can poke you down, such as Fiora, Kennen, Quinn, champs like that, you're definitely going to need the shield. Now moving on to your Mythic, and I strongly recommend, especially if you're just starting out, to build Duskblade every game, as this item is just so powerful on the Trox, and it really changes his identity, but once you get used to the new identity, it makes the champion even more strong than it used to be in the past. Maybe not as powerful as Peak World's Aatrox, but it is a lot stronger than a lot of variations, and I definitely recommend, especially if you're learning to spam this item, because it feels really powerful to get, and it can have a higher impact in teamfights than the other items if you learn how to use it properly. So the way you need to use it differently is you need to play more for a reset than you did in the past, and you also need to use that reset better. So on Duskblade, when you get a kill, for the next 1.5 seconds you are untargetable and invulnerable. Now on Aatrox, let's say you kill someone with your first Q. That means for 1.5 seconds, when you've got your Q2 ready, or maybe even your Q3 ready, they can't touch you at all. So you've got time to reposition in the fight, and we will cover how to do that in the teamfight section. But you can reposition in the fight and then look to get a QE off or a Q flash, and really they can't CC you, they can't damage you, they can't stop you, and you're hitting this 1000 damage AoE ability later on in the game where there's nothing they can do about it. And this item just feels so strong on Aatrox, so definitely build this. But in games where the other two items are better, the example for a Gore Drinker actually being better is if you were to verse, say, 4 Mealies and a Kai'Sa, for example, where you're going to get a lot of value from the Omnivamp and the AoE of it. But even in that game, Duskblade is still good. But there's an example I show later on where Gore Drinker is better, and there are 1 in 20, 1 in 25 games where you can build this. And as for Eclipse, now I'd only build this in matchups where they're going to be diving onto a lot, such as Camille and Jax. However, I'd still prefer to go Duskblade, and I'd only build the Eclipse when I'm pretty far behind and I need the extra shield and move speed to survive those champs. Now as for your second item, you have the choice between Edge of Night and Shrouders. However, you will be building the Edge of Night the majority of the time. The Shrouders is just for if you're versus quite a few tanks, or even if you're just laning against a tank, it does feel nice to have the Shrouders second. If you're versing some armor stacking Ornn, for example, having the Shrouders slow and extra armor pin really increases your kill threat. But in terms of pure team fighting power, trying to one-shot squishies, which is your new identity, Edge of Night is stronger the majority of the time. Now, for your third item, it may be extremely tempting to get the Shrouders, as it's the most damage build and, to be honest, the most fun. However, I found in a lot of games, by this point in the game, your third item, it's around 20-25 minutes, not having any tanky items can be very risky. So a Steeraxe feels extremely nice at this point in the game, and I'd only build Shrouders if I'm pretty fed and the team is really tanky. You do want Shrouders in all of your 6 item builds, but in terms of third item, if you're skilled 2 lethality items, then there's a good chance Steeraxe is better unless you're verse tanks and you don't need the defensive stats at all. And as for more, you just build it if they have some AP champion giving you a lot of trouble. Let's say their Syndra mid is getting fed. He's 5-0 and everyone else is not that strong, then I would most likely go more over the Steeraxe in that scenario. As for your boots, you'll be building Tabbies when you verse a lot of physical damage champs, and Merctred's verse AP and CC. And you can go cooldown boots some games, but I'd only recommend it when you base with enough gold for cooldown boots after your mythic and not enough for the other 2 boots. That's when it's really best because it makes your current spike stronger. But there's something you should know about Tabbies, and it's really strong to build for your laning phase when you're versing these AD bruisers such as Camille, Rengar, Jax. And early Tabbies can be really strong, but I've actually found that it's better to finish your Dirk before you go Tabbies. Because let's say you're verse Fiora, and you've got Ninja Tabbies and Doran's Shield. Your damage is just going to be so low, even with the damage reduction from Tabbies, you're still going to lose trades. But if you wait until you finish your serrated Dirk and then go Tabbies, you've got the tankiness and the mobility from the boots, and you've actually got quite a lot of damage from the Dirk, that when you're level 7, level 9, you can actually really start to win these matchups. Now, as you start to round out your build with the 4th and 5th items, it really depends on how the game state's going, but there are some tips I can give you that will help you decide. And in terms of which armor item to buy between GA and Death Stance, you would go GA versus really bursty comps such as Zed, Malphite, where once their ultis are down, they're quite weak. So if you were to survive that by getting the second life, you'll actually be able to turn the fight. But Death Dance is a lot better versus sustained damage champions such as Jinx, where even if you had GA and Jinx killed you, she's just going to trap your body, you'll stand up and die again anyway. But Death Dance, being able to block a few extra autos because it'll turn the damage into the decaying health, it'll actually give you a chance to kill the Jinx and carry the fight. Now, the other items in this list, Steerax is just always good. I don't need to go too far into it. But in terms of your magic resist item, the only reason I have Stoneplate there is just because you can't build Steerax and more at the same time. So if you've already built a Steerax from your earlier item, then and you still need the magic resist, then you'll go Stoneplate. And Serpent's Fang is very, very niche. You'll just build this if enchanters are giving you trouble, because it actually feels pretty good having 3 lethality items and a Steerax versus, say, a Jinx Lulu when they're the only ones really giving you trouble. Having that extra damage and shield break can actually be the difference in a team fight. Now, if you just wanted some stock standard builds to take into your games while you're learning, these two on the screen will never do you wrong. I would recommend, as you get more and more comfortable on the champion, as you start to get 10 to 20 games in, to experiment with what items feel better in which situation. But in terms of purely learning, if you were to ever build, say, the first example I've got on the screen in any game, you'll be a strong champion. So it's really good for learning just to have these examples in mind, but really try to learn and grow as you progress on your Aatrox journey. Now we're going to be covering the combo section of the guide, and Aatrox has some really fun combos, but for now I just want to teach the easy combos, where these ones are mandatory that you learn before you play them. And the first one is the fact that his E is an auto attack reset. So I'll show you here, auto E auto. Makes the second auto come out a lot smoother, and this one is best used while last hitting, mainly last hitting under tower, and also it's good when the enemy dives onto you in lane, where your Q's on cooldown, and you might be able to win the trade by getting 2 autos off really quickly. Up next we have the Q flash. Now let's say you're out of Q range like I am here. You would close that distance by Q flashing. And you can do this with all of his Qs, not just the first one. And I really recommend it for team fighting, mainly the getting a Q2 flash off or a Q3 onto multiple opponents can really be the difference maker in a team fight. Up next we have the WE combo, and this one is very useful for chasing and also kiting back. So I'll show you here. If I was to normally W, it wouldn't reach at all, and if I were to EW, it'd be a lot slower than just doing a full WE, where now I can reach them, it allow me to hit a Q and keep them in the W, or even if I'm running away, you can Q as you're kiting back, and the W really comes out nicely during your E animation. And the next combo is the QE flash. Now, I definitely recommend practicing this in practice tool before you do it in ranked, because wasting a 5-minute flash cooldown in ranked is a lot more punishing than this practice tool. So I'll show you an example here. As you can see, I'm really far away from this guy, but with QE flash, I can still reach him. And you can do this with all the Qs, obviously. It doesn't have to be the first one, but being able to QE flash from really far away is quite surprising for a lot of people. They don't expect you can get hit by Aatrox here, and will really lead to some kills that you otherwise can't get. Now we're going to be leveling up to the medium combos, and the first one is actually a bit of extra sauce on top of the WE we went over earlier, where you're going to be doing WEQ in one fluid motion. Now this one is best used for kiting backwards when the enemy has gap closed onto you. So let's say this guy's a Jax close to me and I'm trying to create some space. You actually WEQ, and you can hit the sweet spot of your Q, keep them trapped in the W, and it really helps with you kiting away and disengaging the melee all-in threat that he can give to you. Up next we have the Trox's most important combo of all, and that is his main trading combo. And it looks a little something like this. Q, WEQ, auto Q. Now it's really important you start the first Q by not needing to use your E. So you still have your E open for the WEQ, and practice getting that off smoothly, because if you're able to hit both the sweet spots of your Q, you're almost guaranteed to get the pullback with your W. And during the pullback, you can get an auto attack in and movement and your Q3. And this damage is just insane, especially when you've got Dirk and level 5, 7, 9. You're just really going to start to pump out damage if you can execute this combo consistently. Now for his hard combo, it's pretty similar to the medium one, except you'll be using flash as well. So it looks a little something like this. QE flash, WQ, auto Q. Now, the main point that you need to practice is the QE flash range, because it's a lot longer than it looks. You really don't want to be starting this by fumbling the first Q like this, where he's not in the sweet spot at all, and it's really easy for him to walk out a W. Now I've got a bit of secret sauce for you guys, and that is the expert combo, and it looks a little something like this. You're going to be doing this one with Q2, where it is WE flash Q2. And the reason I think this one is the hardest is because it requires you pressing all the buttons in a short amount of time, and also really knowing the W and Q2 range that you can start from. So definitely practice this one before you do it in ranked, but if you can pull it off, you are a beast. Up next, we're going to be covering Aatrox's E. Now, even though his dash is quite a short distance, it can actually cover some really big walls, and you can use this to catch your enemy off guard. So let's say they are hiding under mid tower. You can actually jump this big raptor wall, and it'll catch a lot of people off guard that don't even know you can jump that. And you can also go back over if you needed to. Say you were defending and you needed to escape. You can jump both sides of this wall. Up next is this top lane wall, where you want to be putting your mouse on this leaf sticking out here. And on the way back over, just one of these rocks. Now, this wall is quite forgiving. You don't have to put your mouse in an exact position, but I still don't see a lot of people jumping this, so it's good for you to know about. You can also do the same thing on the tier 2 wall. Now, this one's a little less forgiving, but still fine, as long as you keep your mouse on the leaf here, and your mouse on this leaf here coming back over. Now, this next wall is a little bit more difficult. To start off, you want to position Aatrox in this little crack here between the rocks, and you want to be putting your mouse on the big blue mushroom. Now, to get back over, you don't actually put it where you started. You need to put it on the end here, this last rock. And yeah, use that to get back over. But if you try to dash the wall from this position, it wouldn't work. You really have to be in this little crack and mouse on the shroom. And to get back over, mouse on this rock. Now, this next one is even tougher than the last one, where you want to start off by standing on this moss here, the moss growing on the rock. And your mouse needs to be between these two rocks and to the right a bit, so in this gap between the rocks. And if you do it right, you should be able to clear the wall, and to get back, your mouse should be around the moss as well. The next one is a lot easier, where you can clear this red buff wall, and the only reason I want to go over it is because I just don't see a lot of people clearing this wall in general, so I'm not sure if it's common knowledge, but it's definitely something you should know. And you can also do the same to the other red buff wall, where it's a little bit tougher than the blue side one, but it's the same concept. You can clear all sides of this wall. And the hardest jump of all is you can actually clear this Baron Pit wall, where you want to stand beneath the shield and put your mouse on this crack here where the two rocks separate. And to get back, you put your mouse around where you started. Now we're going to be covering the laning phase, and this is an example from a recent solo queue game of mine, and it is around the start of my relearning Aatrox journey, so there are some mechanical misplays. However, my wave control and setting my lane state up to gain me an advantage is still really good, and it's something I wanted to go over and show you how you can be getting basically solo kills, but mainly advantages in your lane as this champion. So to start us off, I am versus Cho'Gath and Gragas, so there's not a lot of threat on me 1v1 versus Cho'Gath, but Gragas does have a really strong level 3 gank, so I ward for it, and I noticed Cho'Gath leashed, so I zone him back to lane. And here's my first mechanical mistake, and it's a concept I want you guys to learn right now, is that when you use your Q3 on Aatrox, it puts it on a much longer cooldown than if you were to just let it time out. So there, I should have just Q1'd him, tried to hit the Q2, and then, since there's no way my Q3 will hit, instead of chucking it in his face like an idiot, I should have just let it time out, and my Q would be on a much shorter cooldown. But anyway, it's not the biggest deal, it's just definitely a concept you guys should be practicing. But right now I am trading on this Cho'Gath when he goes for CS, but I'm trying not to let my wave push too fast, because I really don't want wave 2 to crash under tower. I want to be crashing the cannon wave, and the reason for that is he can actually freeze wave 2 outside of his tower because the minions do such little damage to him, and then I'm really unable to trade with him other than a Q1. However, if I crash wave 3, he can't just stand out of his tower tanking it, because he'll take way too much damage from the cannon wave, and the cannon wave combined with wave 2 will just do too much damage to him. So if I were to stack wave 3, like I do here, then he is unable to freeze it at all. So I crash this really big wave, and we can't really dive here, so it's not an angle. He's too healthy, because Aatrox has a really weak level 1 to 3, is another concept I want you guys to keep in mind. He does not win a lot of matchups hard, however, versus Cho'Gath, he's quite weak, so this is one of the rare matchups where Aatrox can actually bully level 1 and 2. So I crash in wave 3, and now I'm thinking, okay, I'm level 4 now, Aatrox becomes strong around level 5, level 4, 5. That's when you can actually start taking trades. So I want this wave to be in a state where I can trade on him. So I'm letting the wave come out to me, and even though I could walk past the minions and hit him with my Qs, it would actually clear too much of his wave, and it would ruin this nice slow push back to me that I have. So I am punishing him when he goes for CS, and I do make a slight mistake there damaging the minions, but luckily he does even worse. He's still doing too much damage to minions with his E's. So I still got this wave coming back to me slowly. Now the reason you want it to be coming back to you slowly is that if the wave's too big, Cho'Gath can actually just crash in front of me, and if I hit him, the minions will turn on me, and I'll be unable to freeze it. So that's when you do something called thinning the wave, which is you want to be clearing some of the minions that come in, but not enough that they have less minions than you. You want them to have more minions than you, but you thin them enough that you can actually fight them in the wave. So now Cho'Gath chooses to base in TP, because if he was in lane on this timer, I have actually some kill threat on him. So he TP's back, and right now at this timer, because he's got items and more HP, he's stronger than me. However, I know when I TP, I'll be stronger than him. So I take a trade here to get both of us low, because I saw the enemy jungler bot. I'm in no threat of dying. I just want him low enough that when I base and TP on full HP, I have a chance of a kill. So I try to thin the wave a bit more, dodge his Q. And right now I'm really just trying to obviously get as much gold as I can, but get him as low as I can before I base and TP. And at this timer, I take a base timer that I don't see a lot of people do, that I would like that you should learn from in this moment, where as long as the casters are not under your tower, if you base it, this is a really good time to base, because look, he can't reach the casters without taking like 3 tower shots, and by the time my wave is settled back in lane, I'm based in TP and I lose 1, maybe 2 XP tops, and now my wave is outside of my tower, and I've got this big item spike. Normally you would go Dirk here, but this is one of the rare games we talked about where their comp is full melee with a Kai'Sa. So I come back with my item, and even though I miss my W, I can all in him because I'm way stronger. He's too close for his whip, and I've got my ulti, and my wave was in a spot where there's no way he can get back to his tower. So I'm able to kill him here, and the only reason I got this solo kill is because I knew how to control the wave. I let it come back to me after stacking with 3. I let it come back to me, and I traded on him. I didn't want to be completely a pussy and not trade at all, but I traded on him without ruining the integrity of my wave, so that it came back to me while he was getting lower and lower, and I was able to use the back timer where the casters were outside of tower and mine were basically 3v3ing them, where he can't crash it in. So I have enough time to base in TP, get back to lane, and really punish this 1100 gold versus 600 gold base. Up next I have a VOD I really want to show, and the reason I want to show this one so bad is because I know, as you learn and master Aatrox, you're going to be versing a lot of Ignite champions, such as Rengar, Riven, Jax, all those all-in bruisers. They're going to run Ignite to try to punish your weak early and cut your, excessive amounts of healing. So in this game, I'm versing Ignite Camille, and it was quite early on my Aatrox journey, where I wouldn't say I forgot, but I disrespected how weak I was early, so I actually end up dying. Now, even though I die, I want to showcase this VOD because my recovery from this point was quite good, and it's something that you can learn from and apply to your games. So now I TP back to lane, and I know that he's gone to kill, he's Ignite Camille. He needs to crash this wave and base and spend his kill money, or he's going to be in quite a tough spot because he doesn't have TP. The only way for him to base freely is to crash a big wave or have the minions reset to even. So the wave's coming towards me. If he was to base, he would lose a lot of XP. So me knowing this, I'm thinning the wave with the intention to freeze it outside my tower. Now, the best time to punish him with your freeze is every time he goes for a CS. So you want to be punishing him for each CS with your Qs, and during the downtime, you just want to be autoing the wave and keeping it thinned as much as possible. So here, punish him for going for that CS. And even though the trading's quite even, as long as he can't base, it is fine, because I'm under my tower. So I look to punish him for CS like this every time I have abilities, and just hold this freeze, just standing here tanking a few casters, and really not allowing him to base. And here he thinks about basing, but he decides against it, because he'll lose too much creeps from the 10v6 I've got going on here. So I punish him every time I've got Q, even though the trades are quite even, it's fine, because I'm under my tower and I'm not allowing him to base. And eventually, he gets quite desperate to crash this wave, and he ends up making a mistake, where I'm able to cancel his E here. Now, even if I didn't get this cancel here, if he played a bit better, I would still have that freeze, he'd still be unable to base, and even though the solo kill was really close, it didn't need to happen, because I'm stopping him from basing. The only way he's going to base is his jungler coming and rescuing him, which alleviates a lot of pressure from my team. Now, in another scenario, my jungler might come and we 2v2 under our tower, and it's quite good. But for the most part, the concept I want you to take is, versus these Ignite champs, dying is not a huge deal as long as you have good understanding of your waves, because if you're able to stop them from basing, they can't spend the money they're getting from you with their Ignite kill, or their cheese, right? And in another scenario where I don't die and I have this freeze, it's even better. It's the same punish, but he doesn't have that free kill I gave him. Now, from this point in the game, we have 1 kill each. However, Aatrox really starts to come online around level 5, where you have 3 points in Q, and your Q is really going to start to chunk on this level. So, coming back to lane, I have that in mind, and I want to be trading on her as hard as I can every time she goes for a creep score, or every time she walks towards me. Now, keeping in mind, she's still Ignite Camille. She can all-in me to the death if I let her get an E onto me. So I don't want to take a fight to the death. I want to punish her every time she goes for creeps. And like here, if she goes on me, I'll Q backwards and really start to get some good trades onto her. And eventually I want her to be low enough that I can all-in her myself, or if she goes on me, I'll kill her. So she keeps trying to trade on me and I'm spacing her out. So far so good. And another good trading tool there, you can actually kite them with your passive, because the auto attack has extra range when your passive's up. But other than that, I'm just queuing her every time she's basically in range, or when she goes on me. And here she kind of gets sick of getting poked and all into me, but if she were to all in me earlier, or if she stayed high HP, she might have been able to win it, but because I was able to trim her HP bar down every time she went for CS, I was actually able to win the all-in. And a cool little mechanic there where with Aatrox's W, even if they leave the square at the last second, they're still going to get pulled in. You have to leave it early. Even if you flash out, you still get pulled in. I'm not sure why, but I'm not complaining. Now I quickly just want to recap on the 3 lane concepts that will help you for your Aatrox laning. The first one is, you are very weak 1 to 3, so the best way to play it out in a lot of matchups where they can get pushed versus you is to let them push while staying high HP, and then look to freeze the wave outside your tower if you can and poke them down. Now you won't always be able to do that, but that is the most ideal way to play out your early lane. The second concept is, you want to be using your Qs to poke them as they go for CS, because it's a lot harder for them to dodge your Q as they're last hitting or walking towards a last hit. And the last concept is, we didn't touch on it too much, but even though Aatrox can QE, just firing it out as fast as you can doesn't make it faster. It actually makes it easier for them to dodge. But the best way to use it is to Q and then hold your E for the last possible frame, millisecond, I guess. Hold it as long as you can and then fire your E depending on what they do. Because when they see you Q, when they see you jump up in the air swinging your big ass sword, they're going to look to dodge left, right, up, down, wherever they want to go. And if you hold your E for the last possible timer, then you have a much higher chance of hitting it because you can react to the way they're dodging. Up next, we're going to be covering matchups. Now, something you might notice right off the bat is that Aatrox has a lot of skill matchups. And that's just because the champion is a really good blind pick, and there's not a lot of champions that hard beat him, but the ones that do beat him are these hyper-mobile all-in champions that can take Ignite. Because Aatrox is extremely weak 1 to 3, and these champions that have a lot of gap closers that can punish you for trying to get your CS, such as Riven, Irelia, Pantheon, can make it really hard for you to get to your spikes without dying. So some advice I can give you to mitigate the damage of these champions is accept the fact that you are a shit stain early and they are really strong, and try to let them push while giving some CS that they'll punish you on, and try to clear wave 3, wave 4, wave 5 without really being in threat from dying. And hopefully, if they make a mistake, they just keep pushing you under the tower and letting you farm, and eventually, when you get a base off, get level 5, get level 7, you can start trading back on them. Now, a big reason why you want to be staying high HP is all these players, Ignite Riven, Ignite Pantheon, they're going to be spam picking for their jungler. And if you take a bad trade, get half HP while they're pushing, they're just going to dive you and you're going to lose all that CS. And you'll be unable to get to your spikes without being really far behind. As for the skill matchup, now, even though the majority of these champions get push against you, these ones are less threatening on later stages of the lane. So once you get to level 5, level 7, you can actually start to dominate these lanes. Now, especially versus champions like Camille or Na, even though they can get push, if you take really good trades as they're pushing, you can look to freeze the wave outside of your tower and punish them for CS every time your Q is up. And we go over the laning more in detail in the laning part of this video. But for now, just keep in mind, you can win these skill matchups, not the entire time, but you got to learn the timers where you win and the timers where they win. And for the majority of the time, Aatrox will lose 1 to 3 against all of these champions. But if you take really good trades, you can start to punish around level 4, level 5, and maybe even look for an all-in solo kill at 6. In terms of the Aatrox favored matchups, these champs really have no way of punishing you before you get to your strong point of the lane, which is level 5, level 7. They have really no way of shutting you down unless you make a huge mistake. And even in a lot of these matchups, such as Akali and Vladimir, you're going to get push. So it's even easier to get to your spikes, and especially when you're level 5, in all of these matchups, you can really start to poke them down and look for these solo kills. And as for the free matchup, these ones are extremely easy because you get push in almost all of them, and for the majority of the time, you have full control of the wave, which means you can do whatever you want with it. You can crash a big wave, let it come back to you, freeze outside your tower, and really look to punish them and deny CS. And if you want a good example of this, I've got a lane example of me versing a Cho'Gath recently that I put in the laning section of the guide that really shows how I use wave control to punish these free matchups and get solo kills. Up next, I wanted to go through the best times to pick this champion, when it's best to pick him, when it's bad to pick him, where it has best conditions. However, if you do just want to spam this champion, it is a really strong blind pick, so it's fine to do so. But I would recommend banning Fiora and then picking him whenever you want in the draft. If you're just playing solo queue and you want to get the most out of this champion, Fiora and Ignite Fiora, especially in, around gold to diamond ranks, can be quite difficult for this champion, especially if you're learning. So definitely if you're just blinding him, ban Fiora, pick Aatrox, it will never do you wrong. Now let's go over when it's best to pick Aatrox, and the best conditions to pick this champion is when you see a lot of short range characters. Now that doesn't mean they have to be melee, but they do have to be short range. So we'll go through an example. Let's say you queue up for solo queue and your AD carry picks Ezreal because he wants to play it for fun. And then they respond with Kai'Sa, Nautilus. Now, if you pick Aatrox, you're going to get value no matter what, because even if you're in a bad matchup, Aatrox is a strong blind pick, it's fine. And you're versus Kai'Sa Nautilus, where Nautilus has to go in to be useful, because not a lot of Nautiluses in solo queue are good at holding their abilities. He's probably going to hook in and try to get something done, which will give you an opportunity to reset. And also Kai'Sa, she's a short range ADC who, for the most part, is probably going to ult in, but even if she just auto attacks, you have a big opportunity to get Qs off onto her because her range is so short, your QE can actually reach her. So you've got a reset opportunity from Nautilus, you've got zoning pressure on the Kai'Sa, so that means Aatrox is automatically good. However, in another scenario where ADC still goes Ezreal and your enemy bot lane goes Cog Lulu, now they're hyper range, there's an enchanter. The chance of you resetting is very, very low unless you get a very good flank onto them, where even then, it's going to be very hard for you to solo kill this Cogmore unless you're super fit. So this is a condition where I'd be more hesitant to pick Aatrox. Let's say you pick Aatrox here and they go Fiora. Now you've got losing bot matchup, losing top matchup, and even if you get through your matchup and you even win the matchup with 1 kill or 20 CS lead, you're not going to be able to deal with this Cogmore at all. This game is purely based on if your bot lane wins or not, which in solo queue is very unreliable. So for the most part, I'd keep in mind Aatrox is very good versus short range characters, and he struggles a lot versus long range hyper carries and enchanters. And as for the best champions to play with Aatrox, he does really well in 2 archetypes. The first one being a dive comp. So let's say, for example, you have Kai'Sa Rakan, and then another diving champ, Akali. This comp will be really good with Aatrox because you'll jump in, you burn your ultis, and you blow up one person where Aatrox will reset. You'll get Duskblade proc and his ulti reset. So dive comps, of course, really good with Aatrox. But another less popular archetype that's good with Aatrox is actually hyper range, where let's say, for example, you have the Jinx, and we'll take the Lulu off them, and then let's just say some long range mid Xerath. Now, your backline is going to poke them from range, so they have to dive onto you. You outrange them, which means if they don't dive onto you, they're just going to get poked and lose the objective. And when they dive onto you, that's when Aatrox really thrives, because he can burn all of his Qs on the diving champions. Let's say they have the Kai'Sa, Rakan, these champions have to dive in, or the Xerath and Jinx are going to poke them down. And when they dive in, Aatrox will really start to do a lot of damage and dominate them because he doesn't have to be jumping forward. He can kite back with his team and really get a lot of damage down with his Qs. And yeah, it really nullifies the weakness of Aatrox, where the champion is pretty short range, but if his teammates are all really long range and the enemy has to dive on, Aatrox can really get all of his damage down, and it really makes up for his weakness. Up next, we're going to be covering team fighting, and the main concept of team fighting well on Aatrox is you want to be starting the fight from either the side of the fight or a flank. So here I've got a good example where I utilize the wall jumps we talked about earlier, and I flank from the side onto the Syndra. And we're able to kill her with this nice Ashe ultimate, and now, if you look at the map, the rest of their team are around Baron. So from this position, even if Syndra were to live, I've still got a nice flank position, and I'm really able to get behind their team. If I were to just fight from the front with this Ivern and Aryan, they're just gonna like walk away, walk back to their towers. But because I've got them pinned between my team and me, they are unable to escape, so they have to fight it out. And at this point in the game, 2-item Aatrox, I'm extremely strong, so if they choose to fight it out, we are going to clean up the fight. To quickly show another example here, I'm flanking not from the side, but from the rear here. My team's on the top half of the map, and I'm flanking from the bottom, where I'm able to get a nice flank. Now, obviously it's nice to Ashe at the arrow, but the point still stands that if their whole team is together, and I'm behind them, my team's in front of them, they have to either turn on my team or turn on me. And if they were to turn on me, I can stall for a long time. As you see here, I've got more, I've got stopwatch, I've got a lot of, a lot of healing. So for the most part, it's fine if they turn on you, but keep in mind there are games where they can one-shot you, and in those times, you're going to have to play a lot more carefully, but you still want to flank, and you want to create pressure on them. You just may have to stand further back and be a lot more careful with your spells in that scenario. For the next concept I want to cover is very specific for Duskblade Aatrox, and that is being very aware when your Duskblade is going to proc. Now, as you can see here on this example, Zeus has a nice flank going, and during this team fight, you can see the way he plays it out when he gets a kill and procs the Duskblade. So the Kai'Sa makes a mistake here, and as you can see, as soon as Zeus gets his kill, he slows down the way he's playing. He does an auto attack, which will cancel the Duskblade invincibility and untargetability. He doesn't use a spell, which will do the same. He repositions himself, using the time where no one can target him, no one can hurt him, and as soon as he sees another opportunity to kill someone or do a lot of damage, he takes it. Now, if he were to just auto attack as soon as he got that kill, then he wouldn't be able to reposition and get that execute on the Nautilus, because he might have got CC'd, he might have got chunked a bit more, and in another fight, it could have been a huge deal. Of course, in this fight, they were going to win regardless, but the concept still stands that if you notice you're about to get a kill, take a breath and just don't auto-attack, don't use a spell, use that invincibility well, and there will be some games where you can get a huge Q off because of it and really make a difference in these fights. Okay, up next we're going to be covering a full game example where I'll talk you through my thought process throughout the entire game, and hopefully that'll help clear up any confusion you have about how to play Aatrox at various stages of the game. So I start off by warding because Camille has quite strong gank setup, and I don't want to be 3-camped, of course. And in this matchup, he's stronger than me, so he will get push. And all I want to do is trade on him every time he goes for last hits, and if I get him low enough, I'm going to look to freeze the wave outside my tower, and then he'll be in quite a tough position. So, for the most part, I'm just trying to thin the wave out as much as I can with auto attacks, so that if I were to freeze, the wave's not big enough that it'll run me over. And now just queuing every time he goes for last hits and my Q's up. And for the most part, this lane's going to how it should. Camille should be winning early trades. But that doesn't mean I'm just gonna just let her, right? Every time my Q's up, I'm gonna look to trade back on her and space her out like this. Now, as soon as I've taken this trade, especially that Q3, I know that there's a good opportunity for me to freeze because he's so low that if he were to try to push the wave in front of me, I could actually throw in a kill. So, the same as before, just queuing when he goes for CS. He's feeling scared himself, so he wards. And now I'm just thinning the wave as much as I can, queuing him when he goes for CS, the same pattern. And I'm actually able to freeze because of that in this situation. And because he sees that, he tries to get a good trade here, and he ends up getting hard punished for that. And now, this is something I wouldn't recommend. I do trade flashes with the Camille, and the reason I don't think this is good, in most cases, is because he has a lot better gank setup than me, and also my jungler is pathing down this game, which means in his next set of camps, he'll be going down again, and I'm no flash Aatrox versus Camille, there's a high chance I can get ganked, and there's a very low chance this Camille can get ganked. So I wouldn't recommend it, but I went for it because I really wanted to force his base here while he's losing creeps to the wave. And as long as I don't die to a gank during my no flash timer, it is actually worth it because he lost so much EXP. So now I choose to base here and TP back because if I didn't base now, he would crash this wave and I'd be stuck under my tower for ages, but I just want to be trading onto him as much as I can, so I match his base. And now from this point, I'm trying to clear the wave as fast as I can, and the reason I want to clear it fast here is because I don't want his next wave to hit tower and take tower shots, because that means my wave will push a lot faster because his one died to tower. So I want the wave to be here, exactly where it is. So now, even though their jungler's coming up, mine's going down, I can't die from this lane state. But if his wave were to die to tower, especially the cannon creep, my wave would push out too fast and I'd be in danger of dying. So my wave's in a good state, I can't die to their jungler on this timer, which is around the time where he wants to be eating his second spawn of camps, around 4:10, 4:15. And now I'm just slow pushing, building this huge wave, because, like, one, if you have a huge wave and crash it, you have a lot more free time to choose your next move. And two, with this huge wave, it is pretty hard to gank you, because I can just fight them in the wave, and there's a good chance they just die to the creeps. So now I've crashed this big wave, I have a lot of choices. I could base, I could run into the jungler ward, but I choose to harass him under tower. This is another Aatrox laning tip you should be taking, where you can queue them under tower and dash back as long as you are calculating the tower shot timer. So you see it shooting, boom, 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 and just as it fires the shot at the creep, that's when you want to hit them and dash back, because it's not going to shoot the next tower shot at you instantly, it's still traveling, so you have time to escape the tower range. And now he's low HP, no flash, no TP, and my jungler sees it and has a look, but of course it's nothing, we don't have much dive threat. Aatrox doesn't really have any hard crowd control to set up Nidalee, so he doesn't take it, which is fine. But now my lane state is really good. The wave is pushing towards me, and he tries to trade on me for some reason, so I end up getting a solo kill. But even if he didn't trade on me at that timer, I had the wave pulled, so it was pushing towards me, and I can stay in that bush that I was in and zone him from gold and eventually EXP. So he chose to die though instead of that, so I didn't really get to showcase it, but you can visualize in your head, you can imagine that if I were to pull the wave and hide in that bush with the wave coming back to me, it'll be really hard for him to play, because I can QE out of that bush, I can poke him, force him to blow his ward, and really just zone him from playing the game in general. And now I proc Demolish, we talked about earlier, the man's rune, and I choose to base here. Got pretty lucky there, luckily didn't stop my base. And now Dirk double sword, I'm level 7, this is basically Aatrox's strongest point in the lane, and this is where I want to be dominating the hardest. Now I'm just going to speed up walking back to the lane, and my thought process from this point is I want to freeze outside my tower and damage him as much as I can. Now, there is something you need to keep in mind versus these strong roaming champs like Camille, Malphite, Ornn, that if you are to freeze when they're level 6, they could run mid and kill your mid laner. But I know the way this guy's playing, he's playing greedily for lane, so I don't have to worry about it. But keep in mind, if he was to fog and run mid, I would have pushed this as hard as I can and really not allowed him to affect my mid laner's lane, basically. But now he's chunked from the freeze I did earlier, and I'm playing for either Demolish proc or solo kill under tower. And because he disrespects and goes for too much CS, I was able to kill him. So from this point on, a good habit to get into would be to base, because I was able to come back on the map faster than him, which means I'm up tempo and I can keep this wave under tower and really secure Herald for my team, not let him roam. Just really good for the map state if you just stay up in tempo. However, because I'm so close to Duskblade, I choose to greed for it, which is not a mistake per se, but you do need to play differently. So now I've greeded for Duskblade. I should have gone the safe way to Herald, but because I didn't, they have an opportunity to kill me. Now, luckily I'm so strong I can 1v2, and if my Nidalee saw what was going on and came over, we would have probably won this. But it's still the concept of staying up in tempo is really good for the map state. I don't recommend pinging your jungler, by the way, but I was quite surprised he didn't see what was going on, which is fine. He's really focused on this Herald. And even though I traded 1 for 1 and it looks okay, it's better to not die and to be up in tempo and alleviate no pressure, because if you're always on the map, always alive, always keeping him stuck under tower, that is so much more suffocating than trading kills, because now Zig's got a kill, he's pretty happy, and Camille has a big timer where I'm not in the lane punishing him, where he can see us, and maybe he can even roam mid. So for the most part, it's better to stay up in tempo and keep your foot on the throat, but if you are to greed for your Duskblade, greed for a big item, make sure you play accordingly. Now from this point, I've of course got Duskblade, and I know I'm so strong that even if Kha'Zix were to gang me, I'd 1v2, so even though I see him topside here, it's not really a bother for me, because if he was to run into my lane, I'd kill them both. And I'm really just trying to punish Camille when she goes near me or goes for CS. And really, as you can see here, my damage is just so high that if she goes anywhere near me, she gets one shot. This is, of course, the power of Duskblade. And the fact that, because I know this power spike, Duskblade, that if Aatrox were to come into my lane, I could 1v2. It allows me to play super aggressively on weak side. And that'll come with experience, you learning the power of your spikes, which are, of course, level 7, level 9, Dirk, Duskblade, all of these really increase the power of your champ. But for the most part, you're just going to have to gain that with experience when you can 1v2 and when you can't. So now I'm so far ahead, I'm just playing for Demolish procs and proxying the wave. Because of course, if you proxy the wave, it makes your backing much more efficient, because you're clearing the wave halfway up the lane. You don't have to wait the extra 15 seconds for it to reach your lane. So if you were to base after proxying, you'll get back to lane way faster than if you were to clear it in your lane. And now I take a base just because I have enough money for boots, and also my Demolish is on cooldown, so I'm not going to break his tower anytime soon. And also it's Camille, he can't push the wave fast enough to get a roam from it, so this base is good. And I'm asking my team to put Flame Ward spot, because Aatrox, as we talked about in the teamfighting section, it's not just in teamfights, his flanks are really powerful, so if I'm able to get behind the bot lane, there's a good chance I can double kill them. Now, I don't think my bot lane ended up putting those wards down. I think they didn't have any, but that's still a really good thing to look out for and communicate to your team. And now I just want to basically break the tower, so before 14 minutes, before the plates fall. So I ward for it, and I'm looking for Camille, but if he's even under the tower, it doesn't really affect me. I can still proc Demolish in front of him because I'm so strong. But I ideally want to be stacking 2 waves like this and poking him if he walks near me. Now I want to stack 2 waves, because if the wave is really big, like 12 creeps instead of 6, and he ease onto me, he's going to take so much more damage than if it was just 1 wave. And also if I have 2 waves, it'll allow me to hit tower for a much longer time. But yeah, he loses cannon XP and gold from this, which is good. Even though I don't have the cannon for bashing the tower, he loses the XP, so it's worth. And every time he goes near me, he's just getting poked. And I'm just trying to stack the biggest wave I can and look to break his tower on the Demolish proc. So I could have taken that wave opportunity, but I go for one more. And I'll speed this up because Camille is AFK. Nope, there he is. And yeah, even though the jungler's here, it doesn't really bother me. I'm not disrespecting him, but I don't really care that he's there. I wouldn't let Camille CS, but I'm spaced enough that it gives me more options in the fight. But yeah, poking him as much as I can, and the only reason I'm not hitting this tower is because I don't want Kha'Zix to jump the wall at me. So if Kha'Zix wasn't there, I would have broken the tower, but I still have another minute, so I'm not rushing. I'm not risking death. I'm taking it slow and just breaking it at my own pace, basically. Now from this point, there's a very important concept I want to cover with you, and it's a huge mistake I see a lot of players make, and that's you don't want to force any plays after you've won your lane. So from this point, I've broken my tower. If I were to just run bot here and try to help my losing bot lane, there's no guarantee this Ashe Braum will let them kill me. They're an extremely safe duo, and they've probably got wards in our enemy bot jungle. And also my champ is Aatrox. I'm not Malphite, I'm not Ornn. My gank is very weak. The chance I kill them is so low that I'm just hoping they are inting, basically, if I run bot. And during that whole time that I'm wasting running around bot, the Camille is farming, she's pushing. In a different game, she might get plates, but for the most part, she is just farming her way back into the game. But if I were to run back top and pressure her on every wave, keep her stuck under the top tier 2, and fully take over the enemy top jungle, and threaten mid, now they're mid scared, Camille's scared, their jungler's scared, I'm pressuring a big portion of the map, and I still have TP for bot. So I'm effectively pressuring the entire map in one swoop. Where if I were to run bot, the Ashe Braum respect for a couple waves, Camille pushes and I TP back top. Now Camille's got a free move, their bot lane's free once they see me TP. It doesn't really do anything. The only thing that could come out of it is if they play like Mongoloids and just let me kill them. But that's not guaranteed, so it's better to run back to the lane you just broke. Not every time. There are times where you're playing Malphite or Camille and you can just run bot and kill them if they're playing crazy, like Kalista or something. But for the most part, after you win your lane, you don't want to alleviate any pressure on your lane opponent. You want to keep him trapped under the top tower and ward up the top jungle as best as you can and pressure mid, pressure jungle, pressure top, and really stamp your control of the map before you look to move somewhere. Now from this point, I've gotten Camille pinned under top tower. I'm pressuring Kha'Zix off these camps and I'm securing Herald. So ideally, if Kha'Zix wasn't in top jungle, I'd be playing him there. But the reality is he's there, which is alleviating pressure for bot. And now that I've got Camille pushed and Camille pressured, we can get this Rift Herald. Now, of course, Zed made a mistake. We're playing solo queue. Everyone on your team's not gonna play well all the time, so it's fine. Because I'm still so strong that even if they contest this Herald, we'll win. And also Camille still needs to clear the wave I pinned her under tower with. So now we get the Herald, and first thing I do, back to the wave to pin Camille again, because if I were to waste time going somewhere else, then she's got time to farm camp, she's got time to gank, and I really don't want to be giving her any breathing room. So now I'm back to pinning Camille under tower, and there's another concept I want to cover with you, is your back timers when you're side laning. Now, from this point in the game, I've pinned her under tower, I'm basing. It may look like I'm just basing for my Edge of Night, which it is a factor of why I'm recalling. But the main reason I'm basing at this timer is because Camille's already pinned, I've got an item, but the main reason being is Dragon is coming soon. Now, instead of keeping Camille pinned and TPing to this Dragon, and then for the next 4 or 5 minutes of the game where I don't have TP, it's a lot harder for me to impact the side lane. I'm basing around 30 seconds before the Dragon, and running straight back onto the map onto the Dragon. So now I'm here, if they were to fight it, would completely destroy them, because I'm 2-item Aatrox. And Camille was pinned earlier, so for him to break top tower, it would take him a long time. And during that time, I could fog back to top, or we could engage on their team. But for the most part, I've set all the conditions for securing this Dragon. I've been there without them seeing I'm there, which is important because it's more likely they fight it if they don't see you just TP in. I've held my TP, and Camille was pinned beforehand, which are the 3 main steps you want to take before moving to an objective. Now, of course, there will be times where you just TP in. This is just, the steps I'm talking about now are just in an ideal world. So now I'm using my strength to secure this Herald push and going back to the side, and you guessed it, keeping this Camille pinned, not letting him participate in this game. And I see Kha'Zix is in top side, so I will factor that in. But from this point in the game, my whole team is playing quite poorly, so I know that if I were to die to Kha'Zix, we would probably lose. So I choose to respect on this timer. So I just eat camps, which Aatrox is very, very good at eating camps. Something you should be doing in your downtime, as long as you don't piss off your jungler. And now I'm back to trying to pin this guy. Now, the reason I can walk out now, even though I still haven't seen Aatrox, is because Rel's on the way. Which is nice of him, he's allowing me to actually play the game. And don't know if we go on this guy. Yeah, get his flash, not bad. So my Rel is allowing me to pin this Camille, basically, which is nice of him. So I'll speed it up a bit. We clear out their vision and back to pinning this Camille. Because I really don't want him to get back into the game, because this champ scales really well. And now he's pinned, poking him if he ever leaves his tower. I want him to feel the pressure, and if he's not, then I will either gank mid, or in this example he just TPs away, and I'm able to break the top tier 2. Which is another benefit to keeping them pinned. They will eventually feel so restless of not doing anything that they will TP away, and then you can use that time to follow TP and team fight, or break the tower. And here their bot lane tries to go onto me, and luckily they're walking straight at me. I'm not getting flanked from anywhere, they're walking straight at me, so I'm easily able to 1v2 them. And then Braum even disrespects, pretty sure he dies. Yep. And now I don't want my base to be slowed. I want to be swapping sides because the next objective is Baron. So I want to be bot as fast as I can. And I chose to go Styrax this game because over the Last Whisper item, over Shrouders, because they have 0 armor basically. And also they have Assassin, Kha'Zix, Ziggs, they have a lot of burst, so Styrax is really good this game. And there's no need for Shrouders in this game state. So now, from this point in the game, it's the same as earlier. I really just want to be pinning an enemy solo laner under bot tower and fully controlling the enemy jungle, the bot jungle. Now, in this point in the game, Baron is spawning. It's the most important objective on the map. So I really want to be bot, because if they were to start the Baron, I could always TP into it. And if they were to gank me with 2 or 3 people, there's a good chance my team can do the Baron. So I'm pinning and fog of warring between the lanes. Now I can choose to either clear the bot wave as it comes in, or I can choose to force a fight on them if they are playing aggressively. And in this game I noticed the Kha'Zix is 1 HP, so I choose to force the fight. Because I'm pretty sure at this point he was their strongest member, and also he's the jungler, so any fight around Baron could be pretty good if their jungler is basically unable to participate. So the fight ends up going pretty even, which from this game state's pretty good, because keep in mind all 4 of my teammates are very far behind. And pretty sure they go on me here, and I'm able to cancel Camille Q with Camille E with my Q, which is another good thing to keep in mind. You can cancel most gap closes with Aatrox Q. And I'm actually able to kill the Ashe here, because I noticed from her body language that she wanted to auto attack me, so I held my E until she basically walked up and ordered me. Now from this point in the game, coming out of base, I know that it's solo queue, and after this dragon, there's a good chance one of my teammates goes bot and just farms it. So if I were to be running bot out of base, we've got 2 solo laners in bot, it's not very pressuring. So I choose to run top out of map here. And also another variable for deciding if you want to be top or not, is if your mid laner has TP, and you're the strongest unit on the map, around Baron timer, it is actually better for you to be top, because your mid can always TP if he's needed to. And also, you're the strongest unit, you want to be controlling top side and top river and top jungle with your strength, and really just allowing your team to play towards you. So here, because I'm top, I'm able to punish this Kha'Zix who greeted for an item, and he probably expected Zed to show up here, or someone else, or no one at all. And because I read the map and I was able to be here, we're able to chunk him to 1 HP and kill his top laner who tried to save him. And I'm pretty sure from this kill, we actually end up getting Baron. And now, even though I used ulti, their jungler's 1 HP, he can't really steal this. And now the game is basically in our favor, because I knew where to deploy out of map. So it's not so much just pinning and fogging. It's also every time you deploy, you need to think about the best place for you to be at that timer. And for me, the best place I can be coming out of map here is bot. Now, the main reasons I want to be bot is because 1, top is already, the wave's already pushed in, it's already pressuring. And 2, there's already, all the top towers are gone. If I were to deploy bot, there's a good chance we can break both these bot towers, we break the mid tower, while simultaneously full controlling the enemy bot jungle. Now, a reason I wouldn't want Z top, the reason I want 4 mid and not a 1-3-1, is because majority of the time with Baron, you want to be playing 2 lanes, because it's really easy for, in a 1-3-1, someone to die, or the 3 of your teammates to get engaged on. But luckily, they go on my team here, and my team says 4, not 3, and I'm able to flank, like we talked about in the teamfight section, and the fight goes pretty well. Now, even though they turned on to me here, it's at the point of the game where I'm so strong, I'm able to get my damage down before they kill me, and I'm able to beat them, basically. However, if this were to happen earlier in the game, I just had the 2 lethality items, and they turned on me there. There is a good chance I'd die, so you can't always just flank and dive on in. You need to play accordingly to the items in the game and how strong everyone is. But for the most part, if you're to flank from the rear or the side, and you're able to play patiently, then 9 times out of 10 it's going to work out pretty well. Now, from this point in the game, we're just playing 2 lanes. We don't want to play 3 and give them a chance to come back into the game. And they actually end up engaging on my teammates here bot. And because they engage on them and we're just playing 2, we're able to collapse on them and effectively ace them and end the game. Now, the main concepts I want you to take away from this full game review is mainly about how to play the mid to late game on Aatrox, where you want to be pinning your solo laner. Any solo laner is fine, but primarily the top laner will answer you. You want to be pinning the solo laner under tower and fogging between mid and the lane you're in, while fully controlling their jungle. Now, the reason you want to be doing that, of course we covered it. If you're just run mid out of base, run bot out of base and try to force a fight, and nothing happens, your enemy lane is going to get back into the game, and Aatrox doesn't actually win the side lane versus a lot of his counter picks. So, especially if you win lane, you don't want to be giving this advantage you gained back to them by just running around hoping stuff happens. You want to be doing the high percentile plays of pinning your opponent and fully controlling the map and making sure you secure every neutral objective for your team. To wrap it up, we're going to go through the key takeaways that if you're able to truly hammer these into your brain, you will achieve a high level of mastery on Aatrox in no time. And the first one being, your levels 1 to 3 are extremely weak, survive till 5, and you'll win most of your lanes. Now, what I mean by that is, because a lot of the champions you verse, especially all the counter picks, are going to look to kill you 1 to 3, that is, in my opinion, your most vulnerable point of the game, where if you're able to hit level 5, level 7 without being behind at all, or even being ahead, your win rate will be extremely high. Because all these champions you're going to verse when you blind pick Aatrox, Ignite Riven, Ignite Fiora, so on and so forth, they rely on shutting you down early because they actually can't win trades against you at your spikes. So if you're able to get to those spikes freely, you actually dominate lanes and counter matchups. And the second concept, pin your opponent and fog between the lanes. Now, we went through this extensively in the full game review, but I really want to hammer this down because it's a mistake I still see a lot of players make where they win their lane, they break the tower, and they think, okay, I'm strong, let's go help the boys out. And they run bot straight out of base when you're playing Aatrox. Your hardest engage is QE, which is extremely short range. You don't have Malphite ult, you don't have Ornn ulti. The only way the enemy bot is going to die to you ganking them is if they suicide. So it's a lot better, 9 times out of 10. Obviously not every time, if they have some heavy trading combo and you see them playing like psychos, it's fine. But 9 times out of 10, run back top, pin your opponent under the tower, and fully take over the top jungle, threaten mid, threaten the enemy jungle, and use TP to gank bot from a flanking position. And you can even communicate to your team to get flanks for you, which I'm pretty sure I did in that game. And if they don't, it's up to them, but for the most part, you are doing your job, you're making the enemy top useless, and you're pressuring the map. Now, the third one being arrive at the neutral objective 30 seconds before, and this one is extremely important because Aatrox's most impactful position in the game is mid-game team fighting. And if you're not there early, you're not going to be able to get into a good flank position or flank from the side, and you're not going to be as effective as you could be trying to play front-to-back Aatrox, where if you arrive early, you've got your pink, you've got your sweeper, and you actually clear out all their vision from a flank, and you can see, okay, they don't see me. You can flank them from surprise, which is really going to do a lot of damage, or even if they see you, you can just pressure them and make them choose between engaging on you or engaging on your team. Where if you were to TP late to the fight, they could have already killed your team before you got there. So it's very important to time your bases to get to the objective 30 seconds or more in advance. And the final takeaway, be patient with your E and have discipline. Now, this one may seem pretty straightforward, don't use your E if it's bad, but it's extremely important to really focus on this because I see a lot of Aatroxes run into a team fight and instantly use their first Q and E, and now they don't have their gap closer to do any follow-up damage, where if you were to actually make the distance before you hit your first Q just by walking, you now have Q2, which is extremely powerful with the dash and flash potentially, that you're going to have a high chance of carrying the fight than if you were to just QE the first guy you see. And another scenario is if you have to waste your E, they can turn on you and fully drop all their spells on you and kill you. Because especially on the Lethality Aatrox, you're actually extremely squishy, and you need to rely on the move speed from your ulti and mobility and your damage to keep yourself alive. But if you were to blow your E instantly, there's a much higher chance they can kill you. So it depends on the scenario, but the TLDR is having high discipline on your E and really focusing on all your teamfight reviews, your E usage, will make a big difference in the long run. Okay, we're going to finish it off there, and as usual, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know, but for the most part, I really hope you guys gain some understanding of how to play Aatrox, and I really hope to see you mess around with the new build and really, give him a good chance, because this champ's very strong, very fun, and I think you'll enjoy yourself. So, we'll leave it there. See ya.